welcome to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast, The Stories at the Well. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. Here on this platform, we bring to you voices of women that are out there making a positive impact in their lives, in their families, and the community around them. Today, I have a very special topic and a very special guest for you today. Ladies, mamas, I need y'all to lean in. We're going to be talking about the evolution of motherhood. Yes, from birth to school age to empty nesters to college to grandparenting. We are going to cover it all today. So, without further ado, I am so excited to introduce to you my guest, a returning guest, Kalisha Wilson. Hey, Kalisha, welcome to the well.
Hi, Leah. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Last time we had you here, we were discussing your book, Take a
Mm-hmm.
Seat in Your Destiny.
A woman's guide to
You know
stop running
this.
with emotions. Yes,
Stop
ma'am.
running with emotions. And that was such a powerful discussion. That conversation went for at least 45 minutes to an hour. And we were like, okay, I have to have you back on. And we have to kind of pick up where we left off. And I'm going to just kind of recap a little bit of what we were talking about in your book. Your book was absolutely amazing, a bestseller, of course. So I definitely we'll leave that in the description below. We want everybody to take a seat in their own destiny. So pick that book up. But we were talking about your upbringing, your childhood, and about how you came, you were adopted and you adopted into an amazing family. And over the time you and I have been discussing, and we thought that it would be an amazing opportunity to have this conversation of the evolution of motherhood and how it all comes full circle. So, okay, Kalisha, let me give you the floor and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background before we jump into these different stages of motherhood.
Awesome. Thank you, Leah. Well, my name is Kalisha Wilson. I am a mom. I am a life coach. I have a background in both education and the medical field. And I am just like a absolute soldier out here, just trying to lead with kindness, an example, and really, really hone in on relationships. I have a lot of clients who are mother-daughter, and something is happening with those relationships in this time. So me focusing, that's like my niche, that's my area, in bringing and bridging the gap, because it's just communication. And I have new and exciting things happening in my life because we're transitioning into empty nesters. We're semi empty. So, yeah, I have more free time to pour into the things that I want to do now. Like, it's that era for me.
That is where we're going to end up, at the empty nesters, and then what comes then. And we're going to talk through so many different stages of motherhood where a lot of us kind of get hung up. We're like, what do we do? Like, some of us are pulling our hair out and some of us are like going on vacation weekly. I mean, when you got time to do that? So I want to just start, Kalisha. Let's start with, can you share with us a little bit about your experiences as becoming a young mother for the first time? What were some of the most challenging and rewarding moments that you faced?
Challenging and rewarding. Okay. First time mother. Well, I became a mom at 21. And that's young, and I was unmarried, so the challenge with having a bishop as a father was like, they want you to be married, they want you to not shack up. So the
Yes.
challenge in that was honestly not feeling judged, because sometimes even in the most sacred spaces like church, you can get judged. I had to learn early to stand in my motherhood, even if it looked different than someone else's, even if it wasn't the norm that biblically people would like it. A child is always a blessing. That's what I was taught.
Yeah.
So he brought me to that space for a reason, and my journey began, and I didn't know that I would mother children outside of my own even. But when I was young, I just had that, I want to get it right.
Yeah.
attitude, and you're trying to do everything perfect, but you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's no book. You can babysit all you want. But when
Mhm.
that baby is yours all the time, it's a different thing. So the most beautiful thing though was the bond, because for a while in the beginning, the first 2 years, my husband at that time was in the military on a boat. So I was bonding with our son the first 2 years. He became like my little best friend because I wrapped my life around him. I chose that route. And I had other young mothers around me. So we kind of helped each other like a little village, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you need that support. You can do it without it, but having it is a
Yeah.
big blessing. So I think that that's the biggest joy, is the relationships that came out of me being a mom. Because when you have similar things going on, diapers, late night feedings, irritation, sometimes you just don't want to hear the cry in the beginning because you heard it for 4 days, and
Yeah.
you have that friend that's like, girl, let me come over and bring my baby too, so we can
Yeah.
kind of, relieve the stress a little bit. So I think that was the beautiful side of
Yeah.
becoming a mother.
And that's true. I mean, that village to let you know that you are okay. You are still human. Yes, you are talking to this little person and they're not talking back, but it's normal. Kalisha, I want to ask you, based on having your adoption journey, how much did it play in a role as you being a young mother? Did you think about, man, I want to get this right? Did it kind of trip you up a little bit?
Me being adopted shaped how I approached my motherhood. I didn't want my child to feel abandoned. Not that my mother abandoned me, because that's not the right word. That's the feeling. Like
Mm.
I felt abandoned, but that
Right.
is not actually what she did. But
Right.
I wanted it to be me. I didn't
Right.
want my kid to be like, hey, have those questions. What is
Yeah.
my mom doing? Why didn't she want me? What was wrong with me? All the things that roll through your mind
Right.
when you are an adoption angel. And I just wanted to make sure that my son didn't experience it.
Yeah.
So I kind of worked hard on that, to make sure that he felt that I was there.
Yeah.
And there was even times in my younger years, in my 20s, I had a gap of a year and a half away from my son where I felt I had
Mhm.
inflicted the same type of pain on him. Luckily
Mm.
for him, he was younger than I was and
Yeah.
didn't grow up continuously through it. Like I became an adult knowing adoption all the time, all the way.
Yeah.
Whereas the gap that I had with him, I feel it affected me more than it did him, because I felt like I did the same thing. Do
Gotcha.
you get what I mean? I had this mother
Absolutely.
guilt. I think we all, as moms, sometimes have that mother guilt where, gosh, I could have handled that better. Or man, why didn't I do it this way?
Yeah.
Instead of giving ourselves the grace to understand this is new, we're learning, we will make mistakes, and not repeating the same mistake is the best form of growth and apology to yourself and those affected. So
Yes.
I just, I wanted my son to feel, at that time, I only had a son, I wanted him to feel loved. That
Yeah.
was the biggest thing. I wanted him to
Yeah.
know his mom loved him. You ask him today, he's going
Good.
to tell you, yeah, that's my best friend still.
I love that, and that's huge, Kalisha, because I think that's what a lot of us moms and even dads, we have this like idea in our head. We're like, "Wait, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do that differently," and we end up doing some of the same things. You're like, "Oh, they don't want to be yelling and screaming all day." But I love the fact that you just brought it back down to making sure our children feel loved, seen, and heard. If we've done that for the day, give yourself an applause. Let me move on to next question. How did you manage that transition from being one person to now becoming a parent? And what were some of the key lessons that you learned during that stage?
I want to say, like, having my son with me all the time wasn't a challenge, only because the
Mm,
parents who raised me were also foster parents. And
mm.
I mean, there was times like we would be what they call respite. So an emergency case, like we had kids that would come 2, 3 in the morning.
Oh
And
wow.
a lot of times it was babies. And guess where my parents put the crib? Because my mom wanted me not to be a teen mom. You know what I'm saying? So she was like, we're going to put the crib in your room. I'm 16. And I'm like, I can't sleep.
I-
But I kind of
You
got the
learn.
training of caring for a baby, getting up at night, and I was going
Yeah.
to high school at the same time. Like my parents were very, very strategic in how they taught my brothers and I to be parents. Caring for my son physically was easy.
Yeah.
Caring for him emotionally was difficult because I didn't know how. I was raised by older parents. My dad was born in 1939, my mom in 1943. So these are grandchildren of, you know, that
Mhm.
nice time for us. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
there are some things instilled that they brought to my life and my time that were sometimes harsh, sometimes very firm.
Yeah.
Um, and that helped shape my parenting because I learned the areas not to be so hard on, like
Yeah.
this right here is so small. Like you know, um, all kids will probably make this type of mistake. Those regular children.
Right.
I
Right.
was pushed to, because my dad was the pastor and the bishop,
Yeah.
I was pushed to be my expectation was here and I'm just a kid. So I didn't
Right.
want to bring that pressure to my son. Growing up in a very, very Christian, Pentecostal Christian background, I just didn't want my son to come to Jesus um, by threat. If that makes sense, because I wanted him to learn that the relationship with God was his own to design and have, and it didn't have to look like anybody else's. So that for me, the emotional part in mothering was the more difficult side. The physical, I had it. I could cook. My parents were from down south, so I could do all those things like keeping house, no problem. But am I loving him enough? Did he feel like he got his opinion out? Because children are little people. I tell people that all the time. They are little people with no experience. So they're going to ask all the questions. They're going to do things. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to mess up because they don't know. And at that time, I was not equipped the way I am now as a mother. It just takes experience. There's like no skip to the front and know everything. There's no easy pill you could take to make it all perfect
Look.
fix. The only way to be a mom is to mom. And every child is different, every mother is different, every story is different, and it does not make it wrong or right.
Mhm.
There are kind and unkind stories, but it doesn't make it wrong or right. What works for you may work for the other mom or not. So for me, it was a challenge with the emotional side for sure.
That's good. That's
Mm-hmm.
good.
As a
I could see that, and I can
Mhm.
relate to that. It's a
Mhm.
lot.
It really really is, because you're responsible for shaping the thought processes and choices that these children will make or not make,
Yeah.
and to have that type of control over the situation, because when they're young we are in control. We're not in charge, but we're in
Absolutely.
control.
Absolutely.
And that's a lot of control. You're responsible for another human. And that can be weighty for
Yeah.
someone who is just getting used to being responsible for their own selves.
Yeah.
I had only been responsible for me for 3 years, and
Yeah.
that is a toddler. You would not leave a 3-year-old by themselves. But in
Yeah.
the adult world, I was only 3. So it was a lot. Like we kind of grew up together,
Yeah.
in making those choices. And he was a big part of that because I would ask. I found that in my family, it was do what you're told, don't ask. That's it,
Mhm.
finite.
Mhm.
And with my children, I wanted it to be open dialogue. I wanted to know how they felt. I wanted to know how the decisions that my husband and I made affected them internally, externally, and everything in between. And I found that communicating that way, my children share with me. They don't hide things from me. They don't feel that they can't come to me if the situation is not what they
No.
think I would approve of. For me, communication with my kids was the biggest thing that I learned from my parents, but it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Sometimes you learn what not to do. And that's what happened with that for me.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Yes. My not to do list is long, but I still find myself skipping over there. Okay, so I want to move into raising a young family because yes, we had our babies. Yes, we got through the crying stages, but now they're toddlers and now they're walking around and have their own opinions and they're just picking up little things from what they see you do or what they see around or what they're watching on YouTube or whatever. So raising a young family with its own set of comes with its own set of challenges. How did you balance the demand of having multiple children while trying to maintain your own well-being? How did you find yourself and keep yourself in that all?
Well, first, I was strategic in the space between my kids because I always tell my husband, like, somebody has to leave the house before I let another one in. So my children are 5 years apart because somebody had to go to school before I had the new crying baby.
Oh
I
yeah.
knew what would be too much for me. So we kind of went at it that way. But for the most part, I think what helped us, what got us through that age was independence with our kids. Like when they're like that, they want to basically be you. You
Yeah.
are the only example they've been around. I watch all these videos where the children are mimicking the way grandma walks or, mimicking how mom says this or
Little hand in the
and
pocket.
that is the sponge years. So those
Yeah.
are the years that I was very careful what we did in front of our children. I also gave my children certain responsibilities for their age. If you're playing and you have it a mess, I tried to shape it where I wasn't stressed because I lived in a household where a lot of weight was on my mom. She worked,
Mhm, mhm.
she took care of us, and she had all these wifely duties alongside being a first lady. So she had a flock of sheep at home, and then she had a flock of sheep in the congregation. And I
Mm.
saw the weight of that, and she
Yeah.
handled it with grace each and every day. But I knew the inner workings of that and how it affected her physically, how it affected her mentally. And I did not want to resent my kids,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
sometimes as moms, if we get angry when we realize we've given way more than we should have. We can be a little enabling at times, and it can sometimes spoil a child. It's okay
Yeah.
to spoil your children to a certain extent, but not when it reaches entitlement. And I feel sometimes my mom felt
Ooh.
that way. So I wanted to make sure that my kids understood that there's a certain responsibility they have to themselves. So I started that really young, like really, really young, where I would clean. If I start singing the cleanup song, they would automatically get up and start
Yeah.
picking up toys. We didn't have to fight
Yeah.
over playtime being over because I established a routine. So for me, in the sponge years, that's what I call them,
Yeah.
it's where you really shape the routine. Like my son was 4, but he was picking out his own clothes. He was,
Yeah. That
doing
little
little things for
responsibility.
himself, and I made it accessible for him where it's not dangerous for him to do so. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think those years are just your shaping years. If you think of kids like clay, you're
Mhm.
molding them into what you would like for them to do, because in the end they're going to take everything you gave them and create the tools or reshape the tools to work for them, but
Mhm.
you push them towards the positive direction that you'd like them to go. So
Yeah. Love
that's
that.
where my husband and I were in those years. I wanted to be hands on, so I was at home.
Yeah.
My husband and I had that discussion first. I really feel that's important. If you don't have children yet and you're in a relationship, discuss how you want your children raised. That is a big,
Huge.
big, big deal breaker for some. Some people want mom. Some people's like, hey, I'm going to do my career and have assistants. And no way is wrong. Both ways are what
Right.
suits the family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Yes, have that conversation is so important because you do have a life. You do have your own dreams and goals and wishes, but at the same time, are we on the same page as how that's going to look? I want to ask you, Kalisha, you mentioned something and it's pulling at me. You mentioned the spreading out of our children, right? And a lot of us do that, and some of us don't. Some of us just have kids in between. But I want to talk to you about when we're talking about well being for some of those moms who may have that kid that went off to school. Now they're starting all over again, right? And it is sometimes really difficult. And some women, majority of women, I don't know the stats of that right now, but I'm pretty sure someone does. If you do, put it in the comments below. Knows the stats of what that postpartum depression looks like, and balancing it all. You know, I just went through this. Now I'm going through it again. This depression, I don't know where it's coming from. How, I don't know if you had any experience with this or if you had clients who had experience with this. How do we work through that? How do we get through that? What is the best course of action to take?
Okay, so for me personally, I feel I may have had, I was never diagnosed, but when I'm looking at now the symptoms, because I had my first child in 1998. So there's a lot of things that are
Got you.
now known that
Yeah.
was not known then.
Yeah.
So the way I dealt with that, number one, like I said, I knew what I could handle. So when
Mm,
my husband and I discussed it, we talked about how many children we wanted to have because we wanted to be able to afford to take care of them. That can create stress, finances, and then
mm,
the second was me being able to manage how many children we had. And for me, after my son, I knew what it entailed to pay attention to a newborn. You know what I mean? And at first with him, it's easy. It was kind of easy because it was just him. But now I'm going into a situation where I'm nervous because I'm like, now I have two. I'm gonna have two people, little people tugging on me. And then I was like, oh my gosh. That's when I talked to my husband. I'm like, okay, I don't think we should have any more than two. I don't know if I can handle, and we both were on the same page with finances. At that time, I think we researched it and they said in 2003, it cost $1 million to properly raise a child, including college education. And I was like, hey, we're at 2 million. Can we go further? Sometimes it's the conversation, and not every child that comes to be is planned that way. So sometimes the stress of an unexpected pregnancy can add to that. To me, there is no child that comes here by mistake.
yeah.
As moms, we are so magical with transforming into what our children need,
Yeah.
whether it's 2 or 8. And when you're overwhelmed, and that's where I feel the postpartum really ticks in because
Mm,
it's internal chemically first. And then when you add the weight of caring for the baby and possible other children, it can become so daunting and you just feel defeated. So, in those times, what I would do is ask for space. I really did. I had to sort of charge myself up. I don't care if I went and just sat at the park all day, or for me, my therapy is shopping. My husband hates that, but that I don't care if it is Home Depot. I am cool if I'm browsing through something, even if it's $5 to purchase. It's just the feeling of it.
yeah.
Whatever felt like me. Go get a facial, go for a walk,
Mhm.
write and journal in the park. Like, find something that makes you feel like you, not the mom, not the daughter, not the sister, not anything, but who you are as an entity yourself. I
Mm,
feel if we add ourselves, like I said before, a lot of times we forget ourselves in the equation of love. And
mm,
adding yourself back not only shows others
yeah.
the respect for your space and boundaries to be yourself, it also reassures you that you can do it, because I
Yeah.
know that sometimes moms get pushed to a corner and then come out swinging to win. And that's the only way you can do
That's
it.
it.
Uh,
Yeah.
but every mom moment does not have to be that. Like, we have to take the power of ourselves back.
Yeah.
You have to teach your child that mommy needs space. Like, there were times when after I had our daughter, um, I had a routine, and there was a certain time at night I needed to take a shower, but the kids weren't ready for bed. It's before 8.
Mhm.
So I would get my baby all together. And guess what? 5-year-old little brother, mommy needs to take a 30-minute shower. The door is going to be open. At that time, we were in our first apartment. So it was
Yeah.
small. I could hear, I could see, peek out the shower and see them.
Yeah.
And that teaches him responsibility as a big brother.
Yeah.
That's a bonding moment for him and his sister. He remembers that now. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it also gave me like let me
Huh.
shower by myself while I can, because
Breather.
I had a little girl. So after a while, showers were not Mommy time, you know, she wants to, little girls want to mimic, like boys want to mimic dad.
Yeah.
And it just teaches you to make sure you have space. That's what I would give as advice.
Yeah.
Take the space for you. Figure out when you could get that hour. You know, if your baby goes down for a nap, take that hour
Yeah.
nap if you want to, so you can build up your energy. I napped with my baby. You know,
Yeah.
I know we have a million things to do, but there were times that in the day I napped too because I need the energy to deal with the baby for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just a matter of finding your balance, remembering who you are, and nurturing who that is, loving on her the same way we love everybody else, which is so hard for us to do
So
as
hard for us to do.
so hard,
I
but it's
like
doable.
I like that, Kalisha, because what I hear you saying is that when we have that internal struggle to make sure everything is just perfect, right? And now you have things that you just can't kind of get your hands on. It's hard, it's difficult. But if we set aside that time to say, you know what, I need time to find myself, to regroup, and it's okay to cry, just like the baby. It's all right. We can do it. It is. It is. Okay, so we talked about that. Now I want to move into you and I we discuss this often, especially when you are a mom of multiple children and you have kids going in different directions and you want to be that super mom. Okay, we've gotten out of the toddler stage. Now they're old enough, now they got their own agenda, they have their own schedules, sometimes a lot more extensive than our own. But now talk to me about, talk to some of the moms about how we can balance, trying to be that overall mom everywhere. We want to be teen mom, we want to be classroom mom, we want to do all these things. And some of us have to work. Some of us have, other responsibilities. Some of us are taking care of elderly parents. How do we manage this all? How do we put on all these hats, Kalisha, and do it with grace?
How I've learned to manage my hats is to put them on at the right time. Sometimes we'll put on 10 at the same time, right? It's all about knowing what each entity from you needs and giving it the right amount of time and space. And that sometimes for many people is a very tight schedule to
Yeah.
keep it all. Like, you are a big example. You have children who are out of the home and you have children in the home. So you're in essence in two stages of motherhood simultaneously.
Yeah.
And you don't want the older ones who are practicing adults to feel neglected, and you don't want the babies to feel neglected. However, giving them their own accountability. Children of a certain age should be doing certain things for themselves to be self-sufficient. A lot of times we don't like how our kids do it, and then we end up doing it for them, and that just teaches
Mhm.
them, if they do it sloppy, mom's going to fix it. So I
Yeah.
can give a little piece of effort to it just to say, so she can come, oh no, this is not how you make this bed. You do it like this, and you do it like this. Whereas my mom, when I hurriedly made the bed so I could go outside, she
Mhm.
came in and she said, oh, okay. And she took everything off the bed. And I started from the mattress. I didn't
Mhm.
make it up wrong any other time. This is where
Mhm.
you start teaching the kids to handle some of their responsibility, which frees up space for you. What if you're the breadwinner? You may not be able to come home and make dinner. So you're going to do something before or make the kid. My mom would call, pull the chicken out, you know, chop up the onions, do this to prep because we had to go to church after dinner. So she didn't have time. So I had to step in and fill in. And I feel that
Yeah.
sometimes we want to do it for our kids and we can't. As a mom, we want to make their life easy. We don't want them to go through anything. We don't want them to struggle. And we didn't write their journey. I had to realize that I was the portal God chose to have the children, but their purpose is not up to me.
Mhm.
So the only thing that I can do, He chose me to give them tools so they can do their purpose. And I have to tune into that child because every child is different and push them towards whatever they discover that is. So giving them the responsibility of themselves little by little as they grow helps you because it's off of your plate. You're not responsible for it. They have to be accountable. And it teaches them that big A word. You know, I said there is the ABCs to momming is accountability, balance, and communication. Those are the ABCs of momming. Those are the ABCs of living. If you can do those, it will definitely navigate a little easier. I won't say it'll be smooth, but
No,
if
yeah.
you know if you're being accountable and you communicate, everything will balance. So it's just a matter of handing off some of those hats that you don't have to put on all the time.
Yes.
And that way, when you put the hat on that you're supposed to wear, it sits properly on your head, it covers you. Like, you have to think about what these things are that we're talking about. An imaginary hat is going to shield you from the rays, it's going to cool you off, it's going to, but if you have 10, there's you can't do that.
You can barely hold your head
as
up.
as mothers, I think we have to know our limits. We have to know when our tank is full, and that's what our partners are for. Same thing with dad. You know, if dad's tank is full, sometimes we can hear it in the response to the kids, and you're like, "Hey, come in," because you're typing on that last nerve. He's human. So come in here and get off dad's nerve. Come in here with me. And it's the same thing for me. If my husband hears me have a certain tone, he's like, come here, babe. He's calling the kids because we are human and we get to a full point, and we have to walk away a lot as moms and parents. We really, really do, because these little people are peopling. And sometimes it can push some of those buttons, and we have to be accountable and use those moments to teach. So instead of getting upset, if you have that communication, because yelling, you're this, you're that, you're this, doesn't say anything. But if you say, son, I've been working with you on your bedroom and I've asked you nicely, and I feel like I'm not being heard, because these children today like to communicate their feelings. I discovered
Yes,
that
they do.
if you talk to them, this is their language today. Their language is emotional today. So when you come back with that same language, they tend to respond. And so if
Which
you say, son, I feel very disrespected and hurt by the fact that you don't want to do your part to help in this home. This is our home. Talking to your child like that makes them understand that living in the home they're in is a blessing. Most of us live better than 80% of the people in the world. And once you let your child realize that and know that, they're little humans, so they
they take
hear they
ownership of it.
yeah, and they will shift, and
Yeah.
that's how you have to encourage them to be, in order to free up some time for all the hats you have to put on.
I like that. I like that. Can I just say, I want to just piggyback off what you said, giving bringing about ownership to our children, letting them know that, hey, this is your little brother and you are responsible for him when you go out. That is your big brother. You are supposed to look after them. And I agree with that 100%. They feel ownership, then you get your middle child actually not, leaving the little one. And he's like, hey, come along with me. And it helps us. It helps us as mom.
Absolutely, children help with parenting, because
I like
sometimes
that.
when we can't get through, big brother can, big
Yeah.
sister can, you know what I mean? So they
Yeah.
do assist us. Like, we are a tribe and we work as such.
Okay, I want to move into empty nesters. I'm I looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm taking up all our time. Moving into empty nesters, right? Because you just said it before. We are kind of simultaneously in the same spot, right? I have older ones, so, and I also have from 25 to 6, right? So knowing that, and knowing that you came through this stage, you raised your children, you've, in essence, I want to talk to some of the stay-at-home moms, who, put their dreams on hold, not pause, not it's gone away, but they put them on hold. What do we do? How do we pick back up our lives? How do we pull back from our adult children and start trying to find our way through? How do we do that?
Okay, so this is something new. This is a new area for me. And I found that when we're momming and like in the thick of it, like they're nearing the end, that's when it really starts to hit you like, what else am I going to do? I've done this for the past 18 years, some of us. And what's going to be my purpose? Because sometimes we roll our children into our purpose,
Yeah.
and that's the wrong box for them. They should be rolled into the children's box. Our purpose is just that. It's not being a mom. Well, I have to think about that. It might, I mean, cause for some, because there are people whose purpose is being a mother. I look at the mom who raised me, and they had over 280 foster kids, some crazy number like that. And in that case, your purpose is momming. But for most of us, we had other thoughts and dreams before, but we put them on hold because that's what we do as moms. We want to give our best to our children and we forget about ourselves. So I would suggest what I did not do is continuously pour something into myself. I don't care if you take a Spanish class. I don't care if you learn how to cook Peruvian food. Something of interest to you has to be included in your life.
I like that.
Because when our children step out into the world on their own, they're gone. They're on the way to their journey, and they're going to lean on you when they need you, but you have space now, and all that open space can be scary because you don't know how to fill it. So
Mm,
finding out who you are
mm,
throughout the process of motherhood is key. What do you want to do? What do you enjoy besides being a mother? What things could you contribute to your child that you have that's not just things a mother would contribute? You have to start putting yourself back in the equation. We do not put ourselves in.
mm.
We fix everybody else's lives. We'll support our husbands when they go to work. We'll support our moms and dads when they need us. We'll support our siblings. We support our children. And then we go to bed because we're tired
We're
and we
tired.
forget about ourselves. We cannot forget about ourselves. It is okay to be at the beginning. It is okay to not know who you are when you get to that space. I didn't
Mm,
know
that's
what I
good.
was going to do with my time, where God was going to have me pour my energy, and how that would look for me. Would it be fulfilling and all these things? And I had to dig into myself, figure out what I wanted to do, where I felt the most purposeful, where I felt I was giving everything God gave me to share. And then I focused on that and pushed away the guilt. Because sometimes when
Mm,
we let our children go off into the world, we feel like, oh gosh, you don't want to stalk them, but then you don't want to not call them enough. Like sometimes my daughter's like, well, you haven't called me in 4 days. And I'm like, I'm trying to give you space because you're out there in the world, you're trying to figure it out. And I don't want to be a helicopter mom. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
sometimes we can do that even with our
Yeah.
adult children. I also find that it's hard if your friends are not phasing the same rate as you. If
Yeah.
their kids are younger and yours are older, sometimes there can be, I'm going to just say it, there can be mom stage envy. Like, oh, girl, you got the freedom. I get this all the time. Y'all could just go, honey, anytime y'all want. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but I did it. Like for
I did
me,
my time.
as the adult mom, I sometimes feel like it's diminished by other moms because it's like you
Mm,
forget all the stuff you did just like I'm doing. You're
yeah.
free now, so you don't
Yeah.
understand. And it's like, girl, I was teen mom. I
Yeah.
had to cut up 200 oranges. I
Yeah.
had to, be on the field for 9 games. You know what I mean? Like,
Washing stinky shoulder
yes,
pads,
I watched the uniforms. I helped find it. Dad
empty
was, and I
pantries,
will
and
give my
empty
husband his props.
refrigerators.
And this is where the husbands come into, especially when you have athletic children. I must give my husband props because he did handle like, our son's football things, and I kind of handled the teen mom things. But it was a very, very hard. It was hard to balance. But the joy that I got out of being at my son's games, participating, knowing that they were eating well. Sometimes as moms, we get overwhelmed because we take on stuff. We raise our hand. You know, I got to the point where I stopped raising my hand because then I would raise it 8 times and it's added on top of the 80 things I had to do. So then we get upset with what we have, but we raised our hands. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a big balance in understanding when you've had enough. And then when you're transitioning into adult children, giving them the freedom to make their own mistakes, choices, and decisions, and occupying your time with yourself. Stand in the mirror, look at yourself, and say, it's your time. It's my turn. I did a wonderful job as a mother. You're getting ready to transition into what we call grand, right? Grandmothers are mothers from a grand level. We were talking about how there's hierarchy to motherhood and all its stages. You never stop being a mom or dad, it just goes to another stage. You know, so I just really feel that if you begin to discover who you are presently, it's not going to be who you were when you started to become a mom. You
No,
really absolutely have the experience now to know how to balance, and adding yourself in is where the key component comes in, because we don't do that. We then sometimes we'll flip and find something else to mother. It doesn't necessarily have to be a child. You
yeah,
know, you could take on the
yeah.
responsibilities of an adult. You could take on the responsibilities of someone else's situation because you're looking to fill the void in mothering when you need to mother yourself. If you took the time and loved
Come
yourself like a
on.
would, then you would know, you would be drawn to what it is. But give
Yeah,
yourself the space, open yourself up.
yeah, I like it. I like that, Kalisha. You said you hit it right on the head. I love the fact that you mentioned, what did you say, mom stage envy, because that is real. And I want to kind of transition that to my next stage of motherhood, which is becoming that grandmother and also becoming that mother-in-law. And for some of us who have them and some of us who experience that stage, either you are there now, you are in that mother-in-law or in that grandmother stage, or you are going through it as the mom, as the young mom. Talk to us about, and this is going to be the last stage we're going to cover. This is it. What do we have after this, right? Um, but talk to us about, first, I want you to talk to some of the grandmothers and mother-in-laws who have that disconnect. They forgot about the previous stages we talked about. They forgot about the young mother, the birthing, the depression, the overwhelming, the losing yourself stage. Talk to some of those moms and about how to remember those. How can we remember those and not be so judgmental?
Well, yeah, that's a really sensitive area to
It
come
is.
into play, especially like my son is 26 years old and he has a young lady in his life who we love so much. And
Mm.
I'm learning how I want to shape the relationship with this young lady. And it's from my relationship with my mother-in-law. You met my mother-in-law. We have a
Yeah.
great relationship.
Yeah.
And that's not ideal
No.
usually.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it for me, like we talked about, it's the mom stage envy, but in reverse.
In
You know,
reverse.
sometimes new moms, especially that are adding to the family, extending the family, they get attention.
Yeah.
And when you don't have something of your own to nurture and mother within yourself to progress, you want to take on being the center of attention in someone else's mother story instead of understanding that where you
Mm.
are in a complete place of reverence. You are in a place where what you're pouring into the children is beyond what the parents have. And I think sometimes in the grandparent stage, they lose sight of that because it's fun, it's new, the baby is new, and it's like, ooh, I have a new baby again, but you don't. Like the hardest thing I told
Mm.
my son when he begins to have children is that I don't want to fight with you over your kids because I'm gonna want them too. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I think when you understand your lane and your position as grandmother and you stay in grandmother, you understand that your daughter in law, if you have a son, is not trying to take your son. They're coming into the family, they're adding. And a lot of times, we can feel threatened as moms. Let's be clear. Like, if my son has a mother-in-law and I feel their relationship is closer than ours, and I don't really know the dynamics of it, because if I'm not a communicator, I'm just looking at it. And if their relationship is good and I feel ours is not as good, there's the jealousy,
Yeah.
and it can be very, very hard for the older generations, because the generation before us, some of them don't communicate well. They were taught to be seen and not heard, so they don't have a voice. And when you don't have a voice and you feel abandoned because you don't have children in the home anymore, and then you don't have anything that you're doing to occupy your time that is your thing, then all you have to focus in on is this daughter-in-law, son-in-law, what they're not doing. I would have done it better like this as a mom. And then that adds to the secure insecurities of another mother. And here we have a cycle again of
That's
mothers and
right.
daughters that don't communicate effectively to get along. If
Yeah.
we're going to raise our children collectively as a tribe, as a family, with everybody having their own ingredients specially made to pour into those children, then we are teaching the opposite. Moving forward, I have really, really, really honed in on trying to balance being a mother-in-law, meaning I'm a mother to her because they got together. My son chose her, my daughter chose him, and I don't get to choose anything in that relationship, because the relationship is a totally different box than the mother box. I think when we don't categorize and organize our emotions, we don't organize our intentions, they can be misconstrued as over help. Sometimes the mom could not want your help. They want to be a mom and they feel like, you fed and burped my baby. I didn't ask you to do that. I wanted to do that when I got home. Certain things like that. Understanding mom boundaries, understanding women boundaries, understanding that you too were a young mom who did not want to be told what to do like a child, because you were a mother. Yes, I welcome advice, but it has to be in a grand way. So if you remember the first piece of whatever your title is, especially when we transition into these other levels and you begin to become what that is not grand behavior. I'm a words person, and the ABCs is where it all is: accountability, balance, and communication. Those three things will keep us in check, and remembering where we were in every stage. Just because I'm out of it, like when if I visit my friends who have younger children than me, especially multiple kids, like you have three, I'm gonna jump in and help,
Yeah.
because that's what we need as moms. I don't need anybody to sit back and be like, oh, she's just so overwhelmed. Look at this, it's a mess in here. No, pick something up. Help your friend. You know what I'm saying? If we're
Yes.
in this together, I feel that women who are mothers bond in another way when they come together and become friends. So there should be no question for you to jump in where your sister needs help, or for your sister to jump in where you need help. That is the biggest component that I
That's
want
good.
to push back to us practicing, because when I was young, I remember my aunts, my mom, my female cousins all together coming together. If a person was in a certain situation, we went over there and helped. And they brought the younger girls too, because they wanted us to learn that this is what we do. And
Yeah.
we have gotten away from that in a time where computers, videos, and people on the internet are raising our kids. It
That's
has to
true.
go back to us. There has to be some interactive time where we're passing down those things, because if you're not practicing those things, how can you expect them?
I
I
love
think we want a lot of things that we don't practice
Yeah.
because they are just the things to be desired. When we actually need to put in the work and say, hey, I started Sisters Day. I wanted my daughter to know my sisters, to know her cousins. I wanted my nieces to know me, because I have a great niece who's 5 years old.
Mm.
I'm 43 years older. I need to know her now.
Mm,
and making the time important. We get together once a month, and being older, I want to just be supportive more than overwhelming for my in-law children. You know what I mean? And the only
yeah.
way to do that is to communicate. How do you want this done? Respect their choices when it comes to a baby. There were certain things I didn't want. I didn't give my kids soda, certain things. And my mother-in-law went along with that because those were my choices for our children. And I find when you try to remother someone else's job as a mother is where you're gonna bump heads because they are not your children. They're an extension of your children, but they're not your children. You can love them with every grandmother bone in your body, but the decision making is up to their parents. And if you disagree, I'm gonna give this advice as a grandmother or grandfather. Please pull that parent to the side and communicate that. Never in front of the children. The children are always, always the point of everything we're doing. And to show divide in front of them, to show this is where kids start becoming manipulating. That can go to grandma for something that mom would say no about. But if everybody's on the same page, they got to come up with something else because you can't fool grandma and mom. But if grandma and mom aren't together,
It's
there's going to be disconnect. There's
I
going, and then it trickles into your marriage, into your relationship, because
yeah,
in essence, this is your partner's parent, right?
yeah.
So that person is in the middle. And then you may possibly inflict hurt onto them. And it just creates this whole snowball effect. There's a challenge with the older people sometimes because there is a such thing as stuck in your ways, right? Those people who don't want to grow in certain areas. And in that case, you are not in control of anyone, but you are in charge of yourselves. And it's okay to remove yourself.
Yeah.
I made a vow to myself that I can't let the family that created me destroy the one I created. Meaning the habits that the family who raised me had that were unhealthy, unkind, and non growing, I had to eliminate those if I wanted to see something different. So, I just
Love
think
it.
communication, I keep going back to that.
No,
Use your
it's
words.
yeah.
Use your words. I find that people use the emotion, walk away for 15 minutes, get that anger out, go curse out a bush, and then come back and use your words and actually have a conversation and express why you're feeling the feelings that you're feeling. Do you get what I'm saying? Instead of operating off that feeling first.
I love it, Kalisha. You tied that in so beautifully. Brought back motherhood at full circle. Motherhood is an evolution. It's constantly evolving. And I want to say something that you said, and I think that this is so great for every mom in every stage to do. And this is you said, don't remother. And I want to say this is what I kept thinking when you were talking. Instead of us remothering each other from every stage, just remember. How hard is it to remember? Because when you remember, you won't remother that baby, but yet you'll help. I love that so much. I love it so much. Okay. All right, we took up a lot of your time, and we can literally sit here and talk about this forever because I haven't even gotten to some of the other stages that I really want to talk about. But I want you to leave our listeners, Kalisha, with just a reflection of our conversation as we discuss the different stages of motherhood, from birthing to school age children to empty nesting to mother-in-law and grandparenting. So I want you to give us something to take with us throughout the week, something that we will be able to lean on when we want to remother some children, or we want to scream and pull our hair out, or act as if we forgot who we were, or maybe we did forget who we were. Leave us with some thoughts.
What I would say is that if each one of us who are mothers would, like you said, remember, I when I see a young mom in the store and her kid is like 3, and um the kid is screaming because they want the Skittles and she's overwhelmed. Instead of staring at her, I talk to her and I say, you know what? We've all been there, girl. And it kind of gives them like this lighter feeling because they feel like they're doing something wrong. That's why their kid is doing this. And I remember how it felt, to be that mom and everybody staring at you. So what I would say is make a different choice now when you're out into the world. Open your eyes and see the other moms and what they're going through. And if you have the chance, be encouraging. You never know what that mom is going through. That's how I look at it. That's how I look at my friends. Like, I'm always looking for a way to help a mom. And I remember when I was the mom who needed help. So I think if we do, like you said, key component is remembering, not remothering, because you should not tell a mom what to do. You can advise, and you can advise with love and respect. But telling a mother what to do is insulting to her as a mom, I feel, and it may not be received well. So, kindness is always the way to go. You can do anything and say anything with someone with love involved. So, I would just say, think about your own mothering and how that went and how overwhelming it was and how you made it through, and maybe pass on some of those pointers instead of trying to do it for the mom. You know what I mean? Yeah. And
Yes.
just if you have those sister circles, really lean on them. You know whether you can trust them or not. And if you can't, you probably need a circle, but you should be able
Yes.
to lean on those other people around you and then use the non-moms. That's what I was going to say too. Aunties are second moms.
Yes.
Use the non-moms for those days you need break. Not every woman desires to be a mother, and that's okay also.
And that's all right.
But they make the best helpers
Yeah.
because they don't have the children. So of course they love taking them to the movies, hanging out with them for the weekend, and it gives you a break. So, we are a big circle, and I think if we hold hands instead of crossing our arms, we'll be stronger.
Yes. Okay, that was amazing. Some great nuggets to take away with us. Kalisha, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. I love our conversations. We can literally talk forever. Tell us the name of your book one more time and your website and where we can find it.
My book is available on Amazon.com. Everybody knows that, where that is or how to get there. And it's titled Take a Seat in Your Destiny, A Woman's Guide to Stop Running with Emotions. So thank you, Leah, for having me again. I really enjoyed this platform. I thank you for this platform. We need this as women, as sisters, because sisterhood is diminishing and we need to uplift it and make it prominent again. So I appreciate you and everything that you're doing in that battle.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, goodness. Okay. Thank you for being a guest, Kalisha. Thank you for coming in and sharing your story, sharing your truth, talking to us about motherhood. I want every woman to listen to this. If you were empowered, encouraged by this, I want you to take it, share it with a friend, share it with a sister, share it with a mama. Find Kalisha on all social media under
Lipstick off,
Lipstick Off.
KalishaWilson.com.
Yes.
Two social medias.
And I will also put it in the description below. Follow her, like, subscribe, share this video with someone who can be encouraged. Again, thank you so much, Kalisha, for being my special guest today. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast of Stories at the Well. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. Perhaps you were chosen for such a time as this to write, to tell your story, your truth. Until next time.